Welcome to the CxO Speak series. This is Anamika Gupta, and I head customer marketing for Fujitsu America, the world's 5th largest IT service provider and #1 in Japan. I'm delighted to be here with you. Today, I'm joined by Susan Elkington, President of Toyota Motor Manufacturing Kentucky, also referred as TMMK. Susan oversees an $8 billion operation, which employs more than 10,000 people, and in a year can produce as many as 550,000 vehicles and 600,000 engines. TMMK is Toyota's largest production facility globally. Susan began her career with Toyota in 1998 in Princeton, Indiana, as an assembly engineering specialist. Prior to joining TMMK in 2017 as SVP, she served as General Manager, Production Control Division at Toyota Motor Corporation's TMC Global Headquarters in Toyota City, Japan, supporting Toyota's 53 manufacturing plants worldwide. She currently serves as on numerous charitable and corporate boards, including the Pritchett Committee for Academic Excellence, is a member of the Kentucky Chamber of Commerce Board and its Executive Committee, and a member of the Board of Trustees of the University of Evansville. She is also a non-executive member of Toyota Motor Corporation Australia's TMCA, Executive Management Committee EMC. Throughout her career, Susan has been recognized as a leader in the automotive industry. She was included in Automotive News 100 Leading Women in the North American Auto Industry in 2020, in an inaugural inductee into the Women's in Manufacturing Hall of Fame for 2020, a Step Ahead honoree 2014, and an Athena of Southwest Indiana Award finalist in 2013. Susan has dedicated a career to strengthening the future of the automotive industry through innovation and investment in people, championing diversity and inclusion, growth for women, and mobility for all. Welcome, Susan. With me today, I also have my good friend, Shanti Rajaram, President of DFW ATW Group. I welcome all DFW ATW board members and members who could join us today. We have a long-term relationship with DFW ATW Group as we support this partnership via Fujitsu Women's Innovative Network, also known as WIN. I want to welcome all my global Fujitsu colleagues and WIN members to the session today. Before I invite Shanti for a quick welcome and a few minutes of brief on this vital nonprofit organization, I would like to invite Fujitsu's America CEO, Kinami-san, to welcome Susan and a few words.
Thank you, Amnika. Thank you, Susan, for joining us today for sharing your journey on more than building a car, I believe. Our clients, my colleagues, and myself are excited for the session to hear how you are strengthening the future of automotive industry through innovation and investment in people, growth of women, and the mobility for all. On behalf of Fujitsu, I express my special thanks for being one of our most valuable clients for the past 60 years. It is our pleasure working with Toyota. Our partnership has a bright future together. Thank you, Susan. Over to Shanti.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much, Kinami-san and Fujitsu, for this partnership and opportunity. We at ATW really appreciate it. Empowering women and supporting women in technology, women in business, and women entrepreneurs is my personal passion outside of my day-to-day technology entrepreneur's job. And my role as president of ATW serves towards that exact passion and purpose. ATW is a vital nonprofit organization committed to increasing the number of women in leadership and strengthening the pipeline of girls entering technology fields. Our members are both men and women who support women and girls in technology. We have our signature Great Minds programs, which is a community outreach to encourage young women to pursue career in STEM. We have our LEAD program, which is a comprehensive 6 months leadership program for women in technology to advance in their career. We also have Women Who Lead program, which is for women in transition. And these programs and many more won't be possible if not for partners like Fujitsu supporting us throughout year after year. Thank you for that, Anamika and Fujitsu Win. Susan, ATW is really excited to be partnering with Fujitsu to host you. It brings me great pleasure, and it's my privilege to welcome you to this event. And I'm personally very excited to listen to you. Thank you, and back to you, Anamika.
Thank you, Shanti. Like you, I'm just so excited about the session today. But before inviting Susan for her 15 minutes of a speech on her journey of building more than cars, I want to make a couple of quick announcements for our audience. Please help us make this session interactive. I know you guys are super interactive. I will have tons of questions at the end of the session. As we will have a dedicated 35 minutes of live Q&A with Susan. So let's be prepared for that. The session is being recorded, and we will be sharing this session recording with only the registered participants, so with all of you who are on the call today. So now, without any further ado, over to you, Susan.
Thank you so much for allowing me this opportunity to speak. I was part of your series today, and I really wish we could do this in person. I really feed off of the actual personal interaction, but I will do my best to keep us positive and keep us moving along. Many people ask me how I became the president of Toyota's largest plant in the world. I can tell you it did not happen by chance. I want you to think for a minute about something in your life you feel is impossible. I grew up in rural Indiana where my whole family was connected to agriculture or serving the agriculture community. I could not have imagined another life or doing anything else. So getting a degree in mechanical engineering, impossible. Becoming an engineer at Toyota, impossible. Moving to Japan and becoming the first woman to serve as a leader of a Toyota's global division, impossible. And now leading Toyota's largest plant in the world, making the #1 selling car in America for 19 years in a row, our Camry, plus the #1 selling SUV, the RAV4. Again, impossible. My career has been marked by what I thought were impossible moments. And achieving these milestones are great, but what is more important is the person I have become and the impact that I can have on others to start their impossible. Just like my parents, my high school teacher, and others who gave me the encouragement because they saw more potential in me long before I did. A simple nudge in the right direction helped solidify my career path and form my initial ideas of what leadership looks like. When I interviewed for my first engineering role with Toyota in 1997, I was asked what I wanted to be in 3 to 5 years. And I answered an engineer with such certainty that there was no other option. And then I was asked what I wanted to be doing in 7 to 10 years. I paused, thinking this was a trick question, and gave the only answer I could imagine: be a better engineer. Moving up in Toyota to a leadership position was not even on my radar. As I joined Toyota, I realized being better did not just apply to being an engineer. I was able to question why and go beyond the boundaries of engineering to solve problems and find better ways, which led me to different roles in production, maintenance, administration, and to leadership roles. And still today, I continue to work to be better. And that includes being a better leader. Today, I will share some of my philosophy on leadership and also some of my lessons learned. We all have our unique leadership styles. Mine is centered around being inspirational and transformational. And when I talk about leadership, it's not just about effective management, but also about stimulating creativity, inspiring innovation, and cultivating a culture willing to change and do the right things when you're not there. When I say a leadership team, it's not the same as a management team. For leading and managing are not the same. For you manage processes and you lead people. My key things for effective leadership, no matter your styles, is having a service-oriented attitude, actionable vision for the future, and a passion for your work. At Toyota, we have a philosophy for the way we conduct our business. We call it the Toyota way. And one of those pillars is respect for people, and the other is continuous improvement. You see, these principles of respect for people play out every day on our production floor across the world, where built-in quality is on top of everyone's mind. We do not pass on mistakes to the next person in line, but out of respect and service to our fellow team member, we take responsibility, confirm our own work, pull the end on, and stop the line if a defect occurs, instead of passing it on. When that principle is applied, it ensures we are delivering only the best quality vehicles and products to our customer, earning their respect and trust along the way. These lessons apply to how we lead as well. Every good leader must put themselves in the service of others. This sometimes can be hard. Why? Because it requires intentionality on our part. In order to be effective, our leadership must be grounded in a genuine desire to understand others, to understand what makes them unique and what is important to them. We also must make their problems our problems, realizing if we remove their barriers, they can achieve so much more than we can. When I was first promoted to an executive position, I almost declined because I told my VP that I didn't think I could work all the hours like the other executives and still raise my 2 daughters as a single mom. His words still resonate with me today. He looked at me and said, "I don't expect you to manage like them. I expect you to lead like you. I am confident you can manage both. Do what is necessary for your family. If you think you can't do this at any time, let me know and we will work something out." I never had to go to him. Why were his actions so important? He removed one of my barriers, my self-doubt. He recognized that my style was different and he valued me for it. He knew that it would allow me to truly be me, respecting me in the process and giving the confidence to do it. These values of respect and service towards others were put to the test this past year. We've all had to face the challenges of COVID-19 and have encountered many similar situations. Leading Toyota's largest plant in the world, with more than 10,000 people working at this site, I felt the tremendous weight and responsibility to ensure we were able to return to work as quickly and as safely as possible. I am proud of the work our team put in, implementing over 100 new protocols to help protect against the spread of COVID-19. When we returned to work, I was confident we were doing our very best to provide our team the safest work environment possible. But we didn't stop there. We shared these protocols with other businesses, community partners, and government. For us to be successful, our community needs to be successful. And it didn't end there. We continue to make improvements and find better ways to keep us safe. Now, only must we embrace the service-oriented attitude towards our team, we must also need to captivate the imagination and the energy of the team with a vision for the future. Excuse me. In 1926, our forefather, Takeshi Toyota, founded Toyota Automotive Loom Works to develop the first automated loom, cementing himself as a father of the Japanese Industrial Revolution. He initially designed the automated loom to make his mother's work easier. Now, talk about service-oriented attitude. But it was his son, Kichiro Toyota, who led the example of his father's vision, began Toyota's focus from looms to cars, paving the path to the company we are today. And as his grandson, Akio Toyota, is leading us into the future of mobility. Our founders left us with an important legacy to carry forward, and the second pillar of the Toyota way, the continuous improvement. A commitment to continuous improvement prevents complacency and pushes us to develop and explore new visions and ideas. Complacency weakens our imagination to new possibilities and robs our team of the vision to make our goals a reality Now, new possibilities is what I was after when I took a 3-year assignment in Japan at our global headquarters. This assignment included a role of leading and overseeing production coordination for 53 plants around the world. You know, imagine being from rural Indiana, now living in Japan on a global leadership team for one of the largest companies in the world. It was certainly eye-opening, but one of the greatest gifts this experience gave me was that I realized I didn't know what I didn't know. I had to push myself to learn my own blind spots and seek out connections and new perspectives to help me fill them in. As this happened, I started thinking of the possibilities, and they're endless. But not everyone can have the same experience. So creating an actual vision and empowering our teams to achieve it is so critical. As many of you know, Toyota is in the midst of transforming from an automobile company to a mobility company. With this in mind, in 2018, I challenged our team to rethink our mission and vision statement so that we would be relevant for the next 30 years of manufacturing at Toyota, Kentucky. While many things may change in the coming years and decades, we found ourselves recommitted to the vision that Kichiro Toyota laid out many years ago, maintaining the heart of manufacturing operations, our team members, and the Toyota way, but no longer just seeing ourselves as an automobile manufacturing, but a producer of mobility products of the future. As we're making physical changes to our plant, we are focusing more on what makes us unique: our people, our innovation, and our pride. Now, I'm going to take these a little bit out of order. So let's start with innovation. If we really want to be able to produce the products of the future, we must embrace the same technology and change the way we produce them. We must invest in the research and experimentation. This is true at the large company level, but also at our plant level. How do we connect our processes and our team members as part of IoT4 and big data, autonomous technology, and how do we deliver our parts and move our operations? And as we try, we know we will have failures, but the biggest failure is not trying. So how we respond when failure occurs is so important as a leader. These are the 3 questions I ask when failure occurs. The same questions asked to me when I take on risk and initially failed. Can you fix it? What did you learn? And will it ever happen again? And when you stop and think, the amount that you learn is way farther than what was lost. You know, next is about our people. Our plant here in Kentucky is over 35 years old, the oldest plant in North America, but over half of our workforce has been with the company less than 10 years, with more and more team members retiring. The new workforce has grown up with different technologies and have different expectations of the workplace. So we must continue to change and adapt. And as we adapt, we continue to strengthen our foundation built on the Toyota production system and the Toyota way. These are core to who we are, and they are only achieved when we focus on the development of the team members and the leaders in the organization, for people will always find better ways. And then lastly is pride. Pride motivates more than monetary reward. At a time when our industry is changing faster than ever before and competitors along with it, we need teams willing to go that extra mile, willing to change and adapt, willing to raise their hand and take the actions necessary to set us apart and bring smiles to our customers and our guests. To create pride, it goes beyond just doing your daily work. It's about making connections to what you do, not just here at the plant, but outside the plant, as we live the mission of creating mobility for all. You know, one such program for Toyota is called Toyota for Good. And this is where team members can get involved in our community. Well, we've taken it one step farther. We are connecting it to the development of our engineers. You know, our Engineering Moving Forward team has engaged in 3 projects over the last 2 years. You know, one of those is a push cart in partnership with the UK football team and Kentucky's Children's Hospital. And it allows the patients to participate in the UK football game via this cart. Another is a modified car with lifts and other devices with St. Joe's Hospital, and it's used for training of patients and caregivers at the rehabilitation center to ensure that they can provide mobility as they return. Now, these are amazing projects, but it goes beyond just using our money. It's about our minds, our hands, and most importantly, our hearts. But as you all know, it isn't just enough to have this vision and this plan for the future. As we are leaders, we must also be driven and to have the pride and the passion to pursue it. You know, I love what I do every day. When I step into this plant in Toyota, Kentucky, I'm excited to start the day and tackle the challenges it may bring. When I think about what excites me most about our business, it isn't the cars, it's our people. Everyone would likely agree that becoming a leader within an organization, you must perform, and not just perform, but truly be a force driving the organization forward. It sounds pretty simple, but to perform at the highest level, you must be passionate about what you do and have a purpose in your work. Before my career at Toyota, I found my passion for manufacturing, but it wasn't until the economic crisis of 2008 that I discovered my purpose. Many of you will remember that it was an extremely difficult time in the United States. During this time, you know, I worked at Toyota's truck plant in Indiana, and guess what? No one was buying trucks. This caused us to suspend production for one of the 3 lines for 3 months and consolidate our truck production at our Texas plant. During that time, many of our team would ask the question, how long will Toyota keep us employed? And frankly, being with the company for less than 10 years, I was worried too. I was living in my hometown and I was worried about my family, my coworkers, and my community. True to their word, Toyota laid off no Toyota team members, but significant cost-cutting measures were taken. It was during this difficult time that I found my purpose. At that pivotal point, I chose a career with Toyota and realized that my mission was to be part of securing employment for thousands of team members at US plants for generations to come. That drove me to find ways to make a difference in my work. This still drives me today. My purpose is not just about securing the stability of our team members at Kentucky, but across North America, as I stepped into a new role leading our SUV and sedan platform teams. And with this purpose and passion of my work, I am more willing to take on risk and seek opportunities to make an impact. The impact has changed over the years, but one thing I've learned is we all can have an impact, and our impact is larger when we combine them together. So just think about it. If every team member here at Team Kentucky made an improvement, a Kaizen, or solved one problem this year, that would be over 10,000. I would say that's a pretty big impact. So now I want you to think about your own company and the impact that you can have. So by embracing the service-oriented nature of our roles as leader and charting a vision for the future that involves developing, elevating, and inspiring others, we not only lead our teams to find their purpose, but we empower them to challenge the status quo, be innovative in finding better ways with pride and serving and giving and performing well. I want to thank you for your time, and I will be happy to take questions now.
Thank you, Susan. That was fantastic. That was fantastic. I have tons of questions already in here, and let me start with something. My personal question. I literally wanted to ask you. I've seen this in your bio, and I'm like, you said, I'm convinced that life is 10% what happens to you and 90% of how I react to it. This is one of your favorite quotes. And I mean, from the talk right now, I could see, I definitely now could relate back to why is this your favorite quote? But I would love to have you expand a little bit more for me if you could.
You know, there's so many things that happen in our lives every day. And there are so many things that could just knock us down. And we make a choice every day on how we're going to respond to it. You know, you think about that economic crisis in the automotive industry, and it could have been a time that I stepped away and said, hey, I'm not willing to take the risk in the automotive industry, but I saw it a different way, and I saw it as a way to make a difference. That, these plants that we have around the United States and around the world, it's not just about those employees that are working there, it's about the communities that they're part of. And, that is what's really driven me. And, the same thing I try to do with my own personal life. And, there's many things that we can say and have an excuse and say, well, it's because of this or because of that. But, we can also say, no, that's what energizes me, and this is what I'm going to do to make a difference.
That's wonderful. Okay. Next question is, and I'm trying to just, take the one as per the list here. How do you plan to appeal to Gen Z car buyers with their behavior of being cost efficient, environmentally conscious, and forever connected?
Well, that's probably a little bit different than my role. My role is in manufacturing. But, I think those same type of characteristics happen in our manufacturing world. The workers that we have coming today to our plant are different than the ones that came 30 years ago. They don't necessarily like being inside, doing the exact same thing every day. They want to use the technology. They want to be able to have variations. And I think those are important things, even when you think about how people get to work. More and more people don't own their own cars, and more people want to be more environmentally conscious about coming to work. And so we're trying to use those same technologies, like with rideshare or other means, to be able to support us being able to get workers here. How do we get parts here, and be able to adapt to those changes that are happening.
Thank you, Susan. Now, I know you talked about the workforce here at Toyota Kentucky, and most of them are like less than 10 years, right? And you're probably having more millennials joining the industry as well, the manufacturing industry. So considering this change in the employee-based demography, how as a leader you continue to inspire the younger generation to come to work, and what has worked best in your opinion?
I think the key thing has to be is that, as I said, is you got to understand another person's point of view and how do you engage. So if you think about 30 years ago, the workforce is, really based on seniority. Everybody thought, oh, you've been here longer, so this is when you get to do things. In reality now, the philosophy is more is, what do I contribute and how can I make a difference? And, I think that's one of the key things. A lot of the newer members are part of our innovation and changing how we have data and how do we utilize data. And then also, the purpose in your work. The programs that we're doing now with our engineering and engaging and providing mobility services outside of our plant, it's a way to develop the engineers, but it's also a way to give back. And I think those are some key things that as you get to know that the newer generations, there's different purposes. And then it's not 100% everybody. Some people are very much still want to do that very consistently, but I think that those are things you have to adapt to and have the flexibility to do. And as leaders, as we come out at a different, I'm a different generation, it's important that we continue to learn and engage. We have a wonderful business partnering group here that's called Young Professionals. And I met with them just recently and talked about, hey, as we come out of this pandemic, what are some of the things that we've been doing that we need to maintain? But these are the right things to continue to do. And they're just a wonderful resource for us, and things that I wouldn't necessarily have ever thought about because I never experienced it.
That's wonderful. That's really good to know. I know I have a live question here from Paul Breshnahan. Tom, could you maybe take Paul off mute?
Paul is off mute.
Thank you.
Thanks, Anamika. Susan, just wanted to say thank you very much for sharing your leadership philosophy. I particularly liked you pulling out your purpose. I think often we confuse business goals with purpose. It was just really nice the way you defined what it is that you want to achieve and in the support of the Toyota business. So that's just kind of fantastic. The question that I have for you is going back to the early part of your conversation around how you responded to COVID. And, we saw that was very disruptive for many industries, particularly manufacturing. And you talked about the ideas that your teams were generating of how to overcome it. Could you kind of share with us what your biggest takeaway was from COVID? What was your biggest learning, and how is that going to impact manufacturing at Toyota going forward?
I think some of the key items that we've really pushed us on this one is one is that we are a global company, and in some of our regions we're slow in adapting to technology. But when you get to where you cannot travel, it requires you to use technology, and it also requires you to have trust in someone else. Just even here in North America, the border between Canada and the United States, we had equipment that was going to be built in Kentucky for our Canada plant, and they needed to do the buy-off for that equipment. Well, they couldn't come, and so our engineers from the Kentucky plant went and did that buy-off using the technologies, using GoCams, and they realized, hey, we really do look at the same things, and we really do have trust in each other, and we were able to do that and be able to achieve it and reduce the cycle times. The other part that I think from a COVID standpoint, we did many protocols, and one of the items has to be is that we're separating people. And it has been a huge challenge on how to do communications. When you have a virtual workforce like an office staff, I think it's a little bit easier. But a workforce of team members, when they're so used to having their supervisor, their group leader doing all their communications, and now they can't do that. It has really caused us to have to accelerate in our means of communication with apps, and also big screens and other means of how to do simple communications to be able to do that. And I think that's going to be one of the key items going forward, is continuing how do we connect with our team members, and recognizing the generational differences. The new generation, they're great, put it on an app, we're good. But the team members that have been here for 30 years, not so easy. We have people that still have no cell phones or flip phones, so it's a definitely extreme from that standpoint. And I think the other one is we call it Mendomi. It's our care for our team members, and trying to relieve their stress and be able to be energized at work, and the importance of that. When we were off of production for 8 weeks, our group leaders, our supervisors, called their team members every week just to check in on them and see how they were doing. And all the officers, all the executives got random lists, and we would just call team members and check in. And I think that is a strength that we need to continue to do, is how to make those personal connections. As I explained earlier, that pride and that personal connection is so important to motivate us to achieve so much more in the future.
That's great. Thank you for sharing. And Namika, you're on mute.
Sorry, and thank you. Interesting. So thank you, Paul, and thanks, Susan, again. I have another question from audience here. It says, in terms of the utilization of digital data, is there anything you're thinking of proposing to other sites, like globally designed division, sales division, or to management, in order to realize Toyota's goal of creating better cars?
This is one area that we have an amazing IT team, but we have more, partnerships across. But there is one of the key areas that we've been really working on is across our organization, is being able to see real time, what are the customers buying, and how do we more quickly adapt manufacturing and our supply chain to that. And how can we do it as quickly as possible? Toyota, is very much into standard processes, but our processes for our ordering, they take way too long. And I think that's one that I think is going to be truly amazing as we continue to progress on how to do that. And we're excited, but there's so much that has to happen. Because there's so many connection points. It's our manufacturing processes, but then it goes back to our suppliers too, right? And as someone had asked me earlier, products are changing. This plant is a sedan plant, and it's produced sedans forever. But they're not buying sedans anymore. And then, so then what's that next product? Is it actually going to be an SUV, or is it going to be something else? And then you got autonomous vehicles, and then you got, different powertrains, and the speed of that customers are going to want things are going to be faster and faster. And we can't allow for these huge design cycles to happen. And so that you're seeing just so much more with data being connected to allow both the ordering process, but then also the development processes.
Interesting. Thanks, Suzanne. I think I have Asif who wants to ask a live question. Tom,
Yep.
could you please take Punja off mute? Thank you.
Hi, Susan. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So Asif Punja here. I lead our North American services business for Fujitsu. So I really like the points when you started to connect the people and talk about how people are so critical. Because I think in any business, and especially in ours, fully focused on services, it's critical. You talked about changing the mindset of making sure that they have this services-oriented thought process. Could you maybe elaborate a little bit more on some of the challenges you faced or things that you needed to overcome to kind of put that mindset moving forward?
Yeah, I think one of the key items as that service mindset is, especially as a manufacturing facility, I think everybody can picture that customer as that person buying the car. The big challenge is how do you see that next person on the production line, or that person that's giving you that product, that you're doing a service for, as that customer. And so, like, Fujitsu, you might be looking at Toyota as your customer, but in reality, if you look at your customer as the next person in your process, if you can make it easier and shorter lead time and better quality, then the whole chain gets better. And especially as you're looking at efficiencies, one of the studies that we did is, as I went and looked and started looking at how many times are we doing corrections, because something did flow to that next process. And how many times, even in our one of our recent ones, there's in the design process that has gotten to where we're using our trials for production to catch design issues. Well, there's something wrong here. And so as we really were trying to focus to reduce that lean time, you're finding that we have this outflow. And so that's why it's so important, not just to think about the fact that you need to have good quality work because you have pride in what you do, but then also it's so important for us to achieve the objectives that we have, for us to be competitive. We cannot reduce our cycle times, we cannot reduce our lead times unless we can ensure every step has that good quality. And I think that if people can recognize how does that really impact them, you can see it more and more. And so one of the key things that we've been really working on is for people to understand what they produce, how does somebody else use it? And it takes time. Many people never worked in the automotive industry before they came. So, how do you get, even at the plant, how do you get a person in weld to go over to assembly to know, if I don't weld this correctly, what does that cost to my customer in the next plant? And then once they see it as a person, there's also another connection.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you, Asif, and thanks, Susan, again. Another question I have from audience here is, in Japan, new technologies such as quantum computer technology are being used to calculate the optimal delivery route of parts in production auto vehicles. It's a bit of a long question. What are the most important areas of improvement at Toyota Kentucky from a management perspective? The second question is, from the management perspective, or probably that's just a repetition. In addition, what specific challenges are you taking on?
Oh, wow. That's a
loaded
big
question.
Yeah, so there's two different areas that we were really focusing on. One is the actual, the people, because you can't achieve anything without the people. And then I think the question is more about what are the things more from a plants and operations side. Am I correct in that question?
Yeah, more on the plants and operations side.
Yeah. So on the operations side, one of the key items that I think you talked a little bit about logistics. The complexity of operations is going to continue to increase. And as we continue to increase, I think one of the key items, one is If you add more complexity, people automatically say we're going to need more space. Well, space is expensive. And so you got to figure out how do you do that complexity without adding inventory and without adding additional equipment. And so from a logistics standpoint, that's one of our key areas. So if you have 5 different assist grips, of course we can design to make them exactly the same, which is great. But if the customers demand something different or the product demands that it be something different, then we have to be able to adapt. And so, how do we utilize some of our data and our process improvements to continue to reduce those lead times, but then also to reduce the amount of inventory that we have to allow us to have the space necessary for us to implement those new technologies that are necessary for the new products. So from my vision here at TMMK and what we're really working on the operations side is how do we continue to be able to operate in less space so that we can create, and less resources, so that we can create more space and more resources for those products that are going to come in the future.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you. The other question is, I think you had mentioned a little bit about IoT when you were speaking. So the question is probably touching that. As technologies such as industrial IoT and 5G are rapidly evolving, what specific technologies are being reviewed for TMMK's production sites, and what results or innovations are being achieved?
So for an IoT standpoint, our main objectives as we continue to connect our processes is how do you identify problems quicker? It's really going back to our TPS principles, but how do you identify the problems quicker, and how do we, pull that end on in a faster means? Currently, we have equipment that's been around for 30 years that doesn't have that ability to be connected. One of the things that we're also seeing more and more is as we are working with different vendors of our equipment, that they can do service from a distance. So, the maker might be from Japan. We have this in make our dies. And, the PM needs to be done. And typically we would send a service guy from our person from Japan to be here for 2 or 3 weeks. And now we do everything virtually. He can see the diagnostic data in Japan, and then they can help guide us through the PM and be able to do the repair on the equipment based on that data. That's not something that we would have been able to do in the past, but those are the type of things that we continue to try to use the bigger data for. And then, of course, the next is then how do you increase your efficiency by making sure that you can tie part receipt to the actual time that the part's being used at the specific location.
That's
Those
super
are probably
interesting.
the two biggest areas.
That's super interesting. I know I don't want to put Shanti on the tough spot here. I know you had a question. Do you want to ask now?
Yes, Susan, it's very inspiring to see you come from an engineer to a better engineer to now leading Toyota. But having said that, most of these industries are changing. I mean, it's even manufacturing or automotive is more of a technology industry now. There is a lot of robotics and AI and ML, everything going into building automobiles. Having said that, my question is around, have you seen more women come into manufacturing after this shift? If you are okay to share how many women are there in your manufacturing plant, and what can we do to encourage more girls enter into manufacturing?
I don't know the exact number of how many females that we have here, and it rods and varies, so I won't be able to give that number. But the industry, the engineering area, I was an engineer. I graduated from college, 25, 30 years ago, and at that time there may be maybe about 18% women in engineering, and and then my daughter, who is actually an engineer, also working for Toyota. She graduated, 25 years after I did. And in the core of mechanical, electrical, chemical, civil engineers, that percentage was still 18%. And where you're seeing the growth in our engineering as a degree is more in environmental, biomechanical, and those areas, which are great, absolutely great, but they're not in the core of what we do in manufacturing. So our, especially on the engineering side, we pretty much reflect what is coming out of the business or out of the college students, colleges, but we want to make a change. And so one of the key things that we have really been working on is, not just at the college level, but how do you get younger students to even be engaged? And here in Lexington, there's actually a STEM school for girls that is starting. That starts in elementary school, and it's targeting, not just girls, but girls that maybe didn't imagine anything that they could even do this. And I have high hopes for that program, but it has to be at every level of the education. There's too many biases that are out there, and there's too many people saying, no, this really isn't for you. Hey, why don't you consider this? If you're going to be an engineer, why don't you go on this side? And I think, we really have to change that. The other part on the manufacturing side is that you have to change the image of what manufacturing is. With this plant being here for 30 years, sometimes people are given the opinion of what that plant was 30 years ago. And so one of the key things that we are also trying to do is we do a lot of connections with schools to where we have students come and visit us. But then the other part of it is that you got to have the parents come too. And be able to see that manufacturing isn't what it used to be, because your parents have such big influences in your careers.
Thank you, Susan.
I also heard, Susan, that you have like large daycare facility in the manufacturing facility itself, like which could support the women and the working parents, right?
Yeah, so we have here on our side, actually at several of our sites, we have daycare centers. And this site here is, with it being so large, we have, of course, and they work all the shifts that are all our people work. So basically 24 hours a day, the daycare center open. And actually the school, the local school, if you live in this county, the school bus will come and pick them up and drop them off at the daycare, which makes it a huge benefit to our team members. And I think that's one of the things when I talked about earlier, what are the things that are barriers? And many times we don't even think about what those barriers are, because we can't imagine them, because we never experienced them. And one of the things, even myself being a female, I can imagine some of the barriers that are happening. But the thing is that nowadays our families are different. There's a lot more blended families and a lot more, that people don't consider, and they're not always the easiest. For us here, one of the daycares is an issue. Another key thing is also about transportation, especially as people are buying less car, not having the cars and the ability to get around. So that's another key one, not just for females, but in general. The other key thing for females was that we also have a program where team members can go into our technical area and get degrees. There's a technical school across the road from us, and so they can go to school and work at the same time. And so those are the things that we're able to do as a manufacturing site, and encourage, even after being a team member here, is to encourage that advancement in their degrees, so they can continue to also advance in the company. Not that necessarily a degree is required, you just don't know what you don't know, and that education helps you.
That's true. That's very true. I don't know, Tom, I know I heard from Sherry. So Sherry, do you want to take Sherry off mute?
And I think I'm off mute now. Hi, Susan, nice to meet you.
Hi.
I just wanted to ask you a question. So I was actually quite struck by one of the comments you made early on about having a position you were thinking of going after, and then you were told, I don't expect you to manage like them, I expect you to lead like you. That one really resonated as some pretty timely and great advice. From your perspective, now that you're a little bit past that point in your career, what one piece of advice would you give to the young female leaders as they're looking at their next impossible challenge? What key thing would you want them to focus on?
I'm going to give you another example. Whenever it came my time to go to Japan, and initially I was assigned I had a 2-year assignment, and they came to me before I ever went to Japan and said, hey, we want to increase your assignment from 2 years to 3 years. And I I was like, wow, that extra year is really good. And, you know, I had 2 daughters. We were at university at the time, and I was just really contemplating what I needed to do. And, you know, because my thought was, hey, what if I fail? I kept thinking about what if I failed? What if I failed? You know, I'm going to be there for 3 years. What's going to happen? And somebody asked me the question, well, what happens if you succeed? And what does that open up for you? And I think those are the questions that we have to ask ourselves, and someone needs to ask you. As I know, there's Corey's on the call, and there's some other males that are on the call. As females, we are known that there's a requirement that you have to have these 10 things on these are the requirements for the job, and you have to have 10 things. A female will have all 10 and still question if they're good enough. Males, you know, I give the joke of, you know, hey, you have automotive experience, and you go, oh, I drive a car, check. They're more confident in their ability based on their past experience of succeeding that they can succeed again, and they can learn as they go. Whereas women, we think that we have to know it before we do it. So I think, you know, my advice to them, and I wish I would have known beforehand, is, you know, guess what? You learn it as you go, and what got you here. And if you're working for the right company, which I think Fujitsu is, you know, there's going to be people there to help to make sure you're successful. And if there is problems along the way, they'll help you figure it out. And I think that's one of the great things about working for the companies that we work for. There are amazing companies.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. Great answer.
I was on mute again. So, thank you, Sherry, and brilliant answer, Susan. Thank you so much. I have another question from audience here. Is the corona disaster has prompted a search for new ways of working. At production sites, automation by AI, virtualization, and remote work are beginning to advance. What kind of changes are you planning for the future of work styles? And also, what are your expectations of, you know, companies like IT companies?
Very good question. You know, as a manufacturing company where we build things, there's a portion of our workforce that's going to have to be here. I think we still need to continue to work about how do we create flexibility in being here, but we can't run the line if we don't have the people here. So those are things that are still going to be necessary. But I think there's a lot of support roles that will change in how we do our work. And I'm not going to give you an answer exactly what those things are that are going to stay and which ones are going to move, because we're still in that process of imagining what those things are and what we can do. And like I said, our business partner group, the young professionals, it's going to be a key role, or have a key role in helping us to figure some of those things out. I think one of the big concerns everyone always has, especially as a manager or a leader, you're like, oh, they're not going to work. You're not going to get the same output. And so you got to make certain that whatever you're doing, you can get the same output or maybe even better output. And what I found more and more is that if you provide the best means for people to be able to manage their life and their work, that they will give you a higher output. But we also have to recognize that not everybody can work in the same environment. Some people need to have a little bit more structure in their lives in order to get things done. So you have to provide that structure for them to get things done, where other ones that have that own self-initiative and can get things done. So I think that's also important as we provide that flexibility, is that we also provide it in a way to ensure that the person is efficient and effective in their work.
Very true, very true. It all depends on the person there. I have 2 young leaders from our organization, in fact, leading women in our organization, who have questions for you, Susan. I know, Tom, would you like to take Tamara off the mute?
Tamara should be off mute.
Tamara?
There I go, I pressed mute. Thank you for the young leaders comment, Namika, I appreciate it. And Susan, thank you for the answer to Sherry's question a few questions ago. As a female in technology and as a mother of a daughter who's studying at university in the sciences field, I was cheering your answer there. My question is anchored around business resiliency. Really important in light of the last 12 months actually, and the coronavirus and the pandemic, how do you see technology partners like Fujitsu helping play a role in optimizing different areas in your organization, including supply chain, digital operations, worker safety, and also influencing customer experience?
It was hard time here, for me to hear you, Tamara. I don't know, Susan, if you could catch the question. But Tamara, if you could just ping me the question over Teams, I'll make sure to ask Susan the question and make sure she. It was very hard time hearing you.
I think if I caught the question correctly, she's really wanting to know how do companies like Fujitsu help to support Toyota as we go into those, especially utilizing data for our future.
It was not, yeah,
I think sort of a summarize.
I have the question here from Tamara. So how do you see technology partners like Fujitsu helping play a role in optimizing different areas, including supply chain, digital core operations, worker safety, influencing customer experience?
I think one of the things that you see in Toyota's philosophy and even our restatement of our mission and our vision is the importance of partners. That we're doing that in our development of like with Uber and with rideshare and just different companies across the board that we're partnering with versus trying to do everything ourselves. And because we don't necessarily have the expertise, and to develop that expertise we don't have the time frame to do that. There's too much change that are happening. So I think partnerships like Fujitsu and other companies are going to be critical for us to achieve what we need to achieve in the time frame that we need to obtain. You're seeing that more and more, is that you're not seeing companies trying to do it all because you just don't have the expertise to do that. So exactly what they are going to be and with what partner, I can't give you an answer on that one there, but knowing that those partners are so important for our success.
Thank you, Susan. I know we have 3 more minutes here, and I really want to be cognizant of the time here. I have Tom, is Ellie off mute to ask the question?
Ellie is.
Ellie?
I'm here. Can you hear me, Namika?
Yes.
Excellent. It worked this time. Yay, technology. Susan, thank you so very much for sharing such incredible insight and wisdom to this team. I am so impressed by how you're able to properly juggle and align technology, life balance, a mother, a leader, a mentor. Thank you very, very much. And just to wrap things up from a technology perspective, I'm very curious. I mean, you are feet on the ground, heart, mind, and soul inside technology and the automotive world. So I'm curious as you like automobiles, as they're increasingly becoming more of a digital platform, how do you see this opening up like other opportunities, for a more diverse workforce and, what's typically and traditionally more male dominated, but I mean, I have a son and a daughter, so I have to balance, right? So I've got to look out for both of their careers and look out for both of their futures. I mean, how do you see this changing as automotives are becoming more of a digital platform?
And I think, one of the key things is that, Toyota's just recently come out with its new philosophy, and it's coming, updated philosophy. And one of the key things that they're calling out is that it's a combination of software and hardware. That you can't do one without the other, but they're both important. And as you said, things are going to get more and more digital all the time. And that soft side, so now I can sort of see, vehicles in the past, you always sort of figured you design the outside of the car first, and then you do everything else for the vehicle. I see in the future, you're going to design the software and all that inside, what it does, and then you're going to figure out how to make the shell around it. So I see the whole design process changing. And I think that this will provide, as I said earlier, the core manufacturing positions like mechanical and electrical, those type of things are still there's just so much that's male dominated yet. And people don't see themselves in those worlds. But I think that as this shift happens, the question is how can we have people think about it differently? Because if they think it's automotive, I'm afraid they're going to be shy away from it. Oh, you don't want to go in the automotive industry. But if they see it as technology, are they more willing to step in? And I think that's a key concept that we have as we're branding, especially a company that's been around as long as Toyota, as we're branding ourselves for that next generations, and how do they see it as different than what it is today. I think whenever you have a company like a Google or an Apple stepping into our space, they see them as a technology company, where they were seen as an automotive company, and it's very important that we make that shift in our companies. And I think also it does open up a lot of opportunities for people to see them doing different things in this world. But there's a lot that we have to do to help bridge it. But still, in technology in general, we have more females, but there's still so much more we have to do. And companies like our companies have to continue to find and encourage, and for every negative one that they hear about why women can't do this or why a girl shouldn't be doing this, they have to hear 2 or 3 positives of why they should and why they can. And they need to hear it not just from the females, they gotta hear it from the guys too. They gotta hear it from their fathers. I don't know, you talked about your women's organization that you have. One of the key things that we really work for is creating allyships, and that includes the men. And we had one of our, when I was at Indiana, the secretary for our women's organization was a male. And I asked him, why did you decide to take this leadership role? And he said, because I have 4 daughters. And he said, and I can't imagine it. I can't imagine what they're going to experience in their life, but I want to know, so I can help take down the barriers so they can be whatever they want to be. And I think we need men, along with the women, willing to step up to help find those barriers and bring them down.
Thank you, Susan, and thanks, Ellie. I know we're at the top of the hour, in fact, 2 minutes above, so I really want to thank everybody here who were able to join us today. Thank you, Susan, for inspiring and thought-provoking views and all the things which you have answered by the questions to our audience today. I still have so many questions remaining unanswered today, so I probably maybe collect them and forward it to Justin and see if there's a way for us to be answering some fantastic questions which has come through from the audience. But again, thank you so much, Suzanne, for your time today. Thank you, Shanti. I know Kinami-san had to drop, so thanks, Corey, as well. And thank you, audience, for being such a fantastic audience to us today.
Thank you.